the devil took Jesus up on a very high mountain. It's even higher than the temple,
Right.
you might say,
Yeah.
and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a single glance and the splendor of them. And he said to him, "To you I will give all the power and glory of these kingdoms, for it has been delivered to me, and I can give it to whom I will. Therefore, if you will fall down and worship me, all this shall be yours." Well, the question there, the first question that comes up is just who is this devil, right? And in this case, if Jesus has the power that's attributed to him in the story, then he could take whatever he wanted all the time with no objection, and that would be that. But he'd have to turn to the worship of arbitrary authority, arbitrary power to do that. And that's certainly, I would say, the temptation, the prime temptation of the most competent people. That's why it happens to Moses, is that once you have positioned yourself in a position of authority, especially at a pinnacle, the temptation that's going to emerge immediately is, well, why not use power to get things done faster, even to get them done now, get them done for the best possible reasons, but with force and with power. And Jesus says, "Get thee behind me, Satan," which is also extremely interesting phrasing, because I don't know what you think about this, but I think that's another indication of everything being put in its proper place. Like, if Satan is Lucifer and also the demand for power, if the Luciferian intellect and the demand for power, you don't want to dispense with the intellect, and you don't even want to dispense with ambition. What you want to do is have it behind you.
Become my follower.
Because that's what he says.
Well, then it might even push you forward in the right direction, right?
That's what he says to Peter, too.
Yeah, right,
Behind
exactly.
me.
He's setting Peter up as his mediator. And the problem of Satan and the problem of Peter are the same, which is Peter is in the situation where he's tempted to take it for himself.
Yep.
To say, no, Jesus, you don't have to die. Don't worry. We got this. We got this. And so in that moment, he has to be put behind and say, no, in the
Become
proper...
my disciple
right,
again. Get
exactly.
behind me.
Exactly.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because this verse always terrified me as a kid. Not because of what you're talking about, which is good stuff, by the way. Is Satan telling the truth that he has all that dominion? Is he lying?
Good question, yeah.
Or is he lying to himself? And I only got out of the terror by realized, I'm not claiming I'm right, that he's lying to himself. This is Whitehead's thing, that evil, the one thing we can count on is that in the heart of evil is self-destructiveness.
Mm-hmm.
He's Lucifer in this situation because the kingdom he's offering is the sovereignty over hell. Because if you take the pathway of power, the kingdom you end up ruling over is indistinguishable from hell. So it's very weird, right? Because it's the truth. You could follow that and you could have that dominion. But what you'd end up, I think as soon as you said that, I thought of Hitler committing suicide in the bunker with Berlin in flames. It's like, well,
And also,
you're now the king of hell.
But I
you
was
want
thinking,
it.
my concern is that would turn this almost into a Gnostic verse in which Satan is the demiurge of this world and God is somehow removed and above. And I don't think that's...
No, but it is. It's presented that way in the New Testament, where in some ways the prince of the air, right? The idea that he is the prince of this world. But in some way, it is a lie. It's an illusion. And what Christ is showing us is that the true unity of things is a different path, right? That it is through this...
The true sovereignty.
Right, the true sovereignty is through giving, through emptying. It's not through grasping and holding. But the problem is that our world is full, right? It's full of that. It's not like we don't see it every single day.
There's
we see
also
it all the time.
And it's even successful in a short period of time.
It works It works.
All the realists and the cynics say that. It's like, well, obviously it's all about power. You're just naive if you don't believe that. And the thing that's interesting about that is what naive people believe. Christ is a master at using short, mysterious stories. They change the listener who takes them seriously.
The person that you do not think could ever be virtuous, well, let me show you. This is the person who is fulfilling the law and the prophets.
I don't believe in that promise. I'll just be honest on this point.
Then it hit me. I saw it.
This Jew is very frightened of a post-Christian society.
The power of love.
I don't want to be in a Hallmark card, I tell you.
We've got our work cut out for us, gentlemen. I sure hope we're up to the task. And the cynic is often an improvement over someone who's naive because at least they can see the existence of power. But the problem with the cynic is the cynic can't see beyond power. And I do think, I don't know what you think about this, John, but I think a huge part of the reason that our universities are in upheaval and our society in disarray is because people they believe that it's true that the world is ruled by the spirit of power. They believe that.
But
and it's a false belief.
It's more than a false belief, right? They enter into performative contradiction after performative contradiction when they pronounce it. There's something that's twisting within trying to make that pronouncement. Right?
That's
With
for sure.
corruption, and we can see corruption. We see what it looks like. You see when a state representative decides that it's all about them and their power, and they twist their role, which is supposed to be in service of a higher good and in service of the people, when they twist it towards themselves, and it serves for a while. But
I also,
It's the
John,
sovereignty of souls.
I also think there's another answer to the initial question that you posed, which was, if Jesus were to cede to the temptation, then it would make the temptation what's on offer real, because he would have succeeded in having the Son of God and God himself participate in it. Right? I mean, so that's the sort of knot at the middle of it. When you're saying, is he lying? It's like, in success, like, what do we think the capabilities would be of Jesus to take control if he in fact were turned to evil?
Like Gandalf taking the One Ring kind of thing.
that's right. Yeah, that's a good example.
That's the scariest part of that whole movie, I think, is that moment when Gandalf himself is
Contemplates.
tempted by the ring. And here's a supremely good, character, but you see in his eyes, as Ian McKellen plays him, he's tempted by that ring, and that's more dangerous than the orcs and all those things. It's when Gandalf might have gone
Well, maybe
bad.
it's possible that these temptations mount in significance
they
as
do.
they're put forward, with the power being the
Yes.
most significant temptation.
I think it is.
Could easily be.
Can I just ask, there's a sense in which you can only be tempted by good things, right? And here, these are all good things. Tempted by bread to feed his hunger, tempted by the prospect of his being revealed as the Son of God, and tempted by the prospect that all things be revealed as being under and subordinate to him. And the question I have is, it seems to me that his replies in every case, you might say, enact the posture that affirms the deeper good that he would be denying by giving in to the temptation. So by not. But he literally says, man does not live not by bread alone, but by every word that proceeded of the mouth of God. By saying that, he's actually, you might say, living on the spiritual sustenance of that higher relationship spiritually.
Well, that's what he says at the end.
Well, yes,
right?
and so too with all over the other two, you might say they enact the very thing that is the antidote to the temptation. But it's also very interesting that in every case, he says, it is written. So he's quoting Scripture. It's not, in some sense, they are his words as the Son of God. But in another sense, he's not taking upon himself even to answer out of his own words. And I'm wondering what others make of this. Why is it
He does
here
call himself the embodiment of the prophets and the law, right? He's
Yes.
there to fulfill the prophets and the law and not to replace them. And so I think that's a callback to that. It's a very interesting point, because your question is, why does he take 3 opportunities to call back to Scripture per se?
Yes.
Right, when he could, in principle, say something dramatic and original.
only
and new.
answering in the language of Scripture.
Right. Well, and further on your point, we'll just finish this. Christ says to Satan, "Get thee behind me, for it is written," and this is the antithesis, "Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shall you serve." And so he's stating that heart and soul have to be oriented towards what's highest, and that's the antithesis to the power drive, which I believe to be the case. And that also seems to fit in very nicely with the sacrificial motif. It's, if you're in the proper relationship with your children, even your disciplinary strategies are done not as a consequence of power, but in service to what's higher, which would be the furtherance of their spiritual and physical development, right, in a spirit of love, right? And
Well, it's in service of parental authority, not power.
right.
And we have confused power and authority, so we have totally destroyed
Yeah,
authority.
but even parental authority is not
Teachers don't have
arbitrary.
authority, parents don't have authority, police don't have authority. So the state ends up having all authority.
If we conflate authority and power, that inevitably is the case, right? And I
that's
think
right.
there's a truly dark motivation underneath that, which is the best way to undermine legitimate authority is to make the case that there's no authority but power, right? Because then there's nothing, instantly there's nothing legitimate. That's sort of the core of the war on merit, as far as I'm concerned.
I think the answer to your question also is back to the opening of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It was written, it has been said. It's all conflated.